Happy almost summer, everyone. It's me, John Oltsik, security researcher, cybersecurity community activist, and currently a principal analyst in residence at theCUBE. This is my podcast, the Cybersecurity Bridge. For those of you who are just joining us, the Cybersecurity Bridge is composed of each episode, which the episodes are broken into three parts. We'll talk about the present state of a particular area of cybersecurity. We'll talk about the future state of that area. And then the Cybersecurity Bridge, we'll wrap up with that. And that is how we get from the present to the future. So with that, let me welcome in my guest, Dr. Shawn Murray, whom I met when he was the president of the ISSA, the Information System Security Association. But Shawn, welcome. Please give our audience a brief introduction.
Hi, everyone. John, great to see you again. Great to be on your show. My name is Shawn Murray. I've been a practitioner in the IT realm and cybersecurity realm for more than 30 years. Back when I was an IT guy, there was really no security, but we've evolved over time. I've got a lot of experience working in the federal government, Department of Defense, Department of State, other alphabet agencies, trying to solve complex issues related to information security, cybersecurity, national defense. Also have a lot of experience on the commercial side. We have our own business, Murray Security Services, based out of Colorado. We've been in business for a little over 20 years, trying to solve the same types of problems for our government and our commercial customers. We have two lines of business. One is consulting, so we do everything from assessments to board discussions with senior leadership to training and certification. One of my biggest passions is the teaching aspect of it and mentoring those that we need to have step in and solve problems as we transition out. So pass that tribal knowledge on.
Why, Shawn, is that all you've done? Come on. I know you've got some expertise on this show. Come on.
Yeah, so some of my background, I have been the chief of cyber over many different cyber programs, to include chief of cyber at the U.S. Missile Defense Agency, over a space program. I've been the chief information security officer at a pharmaceutical company based out of Boston, Massachusetts, provide virtual CISO services to many other clients. I do present at various conferences all over the world. I think it was in Poland last year and opened their national conference and advise various leaders at the parliament level. I am on the board of directors for the World Affairs Council through the Department of State, advising members of parliament, national security advisors on various national critical infrastructure issues. I ran Army Cyber Command for all of UCOM.
All right.
Tell me when you want me to stop.
That's good. So, but before we get into our discussion, it's time to play cybersecurity trivia. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, with all that experience, you remember the 2013 Target breach, correct?
I do.
And for those who don't know about that, you should. I'm reading my notes here. There was a compromise of 40 million debit and credit cards and 70 million customer records. Now, that attack was facilitated through a third party. So, Shawn, was that third party Carney HVAC, Estasio Plumbing and HVAC, Creadore Air Conditioning, or Fazio Mechanical Services?
It was one of them. I do remember it was, I'm going to go with Estasio.
You see, I threw some curveballs in because it was an Italian American name. No, it was Fazio Mechanical Services, but fear not or fret not, because I think I think this is my 7th podcast and only one person got the question right. So let's move on to the serious stuff. So Shawn, I want your opinion on this. We always talk about the cybersecurity skills shortage. I read this morning that Cybercrime magazine says there are 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs worldwide. In the research we did with ISSA when I was at ESG, the last time 59% of organizations said that they're impacted by the cybersecurity skill shortage. It's still a controversial subject. Some people say, no, this is an artificial problem. What's your opinion?
No, it's absolutely not an artificial problem. And I usually start these conversations out with 80% of our business processes in any industry are automated. That's IT. And if you're an IT person, an IT professional, you're also a cybersecurity person. And that's the mindset that you need to have in being able to do your job with a secure mindset. I want you to have the technical skills as well as that secure mindset, whether you're a software developer, a database developer, if you're a sysadmin, NetAdmin, engineer, a systems engineer, developer, everything needs to be accomplished with a secure mindset. So we're all in this industry, cybersecurity professionals, because we need to be able to understand how to do that. And there's various disciplines within our industry as well. So you may think, oh, well, I don't want to be a cybersecurity professional and write policies. Well, that's just one discipline. I'll have some of my mentees will ask, Dr. Murray, I want to do cybersecurity. I'm like, great, that's awesome. What do you want to do? Well, I want to do cybersecurity. I'm like, well, the analogy I give is it's like going to med school, right? You go to school for 8 years, you get a license to practice medicine. Now, what do you want to do? You want to be a heart surgeon, OBGYN, oncologist? There's so many different disciplines. It's the same thing with our industry. And so I don't think, unless you're in our industry, you don't understand how complex it is.
And so with that, another thing that happens to me, I guarantee this happens to you all the time, is young people just getting out of college or doing something else say, I've done some classwork, I've gotten some certifications, I really want to get into cybersecurity. I can't get an entry-level job. What do you say to those people?
So I encourage them to join various organizations, nonprofit associations. Of course, ISSA is at the top of the list. The idea is that you need to network. I think it's the number one way that is going to be most effective trying to navigate the job scene. And then you've got to be able to, are you willing to move? If you're just looking for an online job with one specific industry, you're not leaving yourself open for opportunities that may come. There's another aspect to it too that I get discouraged with employers. And I give the example, my daughter works for our company and she's a technical writer for IT and cyber. It's kind of a unicorn discipline in our industry. She applied for a job at a large corporation, aerospace defense that would be recognized. And when she applied for the entry-level position required a master's degree and 8 years of experience. That's not entry level. And so it gets discouraging trying to navigate, and then you submit a resume to this empty black hole that you never get a reply from. And so networking events, go to conferences, students don't have a lot of money. Join a chapter at your college or your university. I got invited to attend University of Colorado Springs engineering program, a Society of Women Engineers. There was a student chapter that I got to attend a networking event a few months back. I couldn't believe how many bright young minds were there, engineers, software engineers, general engineers, technical physicists, mathematics majors. And they're like, well, cybersecurity does all. No, we need people like you in our industry as well. And so it was encouraging. I made some introductions with other employers or people that I know that are looking for qualified candidates. And one of the complexities about hiring cyber professionals is the skill set along with the soft skills. I don't know how we solve all these problems, but networking is probably one of the biggest ways that an entry-level person is going to get that next job.
And so, absolutely, I agree. And I often point people to ISSA. But another thing that I say is we'll try to get some hands-on experience, whether that's at your university or whether that's through some internship. Are there any recommendations that you have along those lines?
And so that's where you take a look at other community resources as well. Just before our session, we were talking about a program here in Colorado through the Colorado State. We participated and advised on a grant that helped the state through the Small Business Development Center and one of the universities and ISSA International and our National Cybersecurity Center put together a program. So you've got several partners looking at a program to be able to take a small business development consultant to advise and mentor a UCCS cyber student to participate and provide a free assessment that's that hands-on piece that you're talking about to a small business that had been onboarded through the SBDC. There are certification component, I think it's Security Plus through CompTIA, that the student attains in that journey as well. And so now on the resume, you're not just graduating with a degree, but you've got a certification that you can demonstrate, and you've got hands-on experience working with in the community that can be demonstrated as well. So that's just one example of going outside of the traditional realm of, hey, I'd like to go, find an internship or a mentorship. Unless you've got an active program going on in your community, you may have to go volunteer. We've got the Girl Scouts now have a cyber program. If you have a daughter or somebody that's in Girl Scouts, go volunteer in the cyber program. Civil Air Patrol, they've got a great STEM program and a Cyber Patriot program. Look for other alternatives to get hands-on experience in order to demonstrate some skills and learn some stuff.
That's great. And what I hear you saying, and I encourage this too, is dig, because those programs are there. They may not be obvious, but they're there.
They are.
When you look at today's landscape, what are the cybersecurity skills you think are either most lacking or most in demand?
So I'll hit on non-cybersecurity. Most cybersecurity in IT personnel were introverts. Some of us are unicorns, but you've got to get out of the introvert mindset. You've got to go out. You've got to participate in the community, and we usually thrive amongst ourselves within our own, what I call the nerd network. So that works out well. But soft skills are really, really, really important. You've got to be able to look people in the eye, shake a hand with a firm handshake, and have a dialogue with a level of confidence that shows that you're interested, you're engaged. So from that perspective, but then on the IT side, a lot of people breaking into cybersecurity may lack the basic or fundamental IT acumen to be effective. And that comes out during an interview. So there are so many resources online. There's so many free classes that you can take just to learn about, hey, what does TCP/IP mean? What is the difference between an IPv4 and an IPv6 address? What is DHCP? Dynamic host, you've got to learn some of the basic things to be able to understand and engage in a conversation. So the basics and the fundamentals of information technology are required to be really successful as a cybersecurity person. All the other stuff you can learn along the way, but instead of scrolling through your phone looking at all the TikTok stuff, I would encourage going out and looking at all these basic fundamental IT stuff that you can take as well.
Yeah, that's great advice, and certainly you can go on YouTube if you like visual learning, as I do. If you want to read, you can use any of the chat bots. But I'm going to shift gears now to the future. And I know you are involved with NICE, which stands for the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. It's a federal program out of NIST, I believe. And so what do you think the role is there, and what's the role of NICE in the future?
So it's interesting because that relationship is increased over the last couple of years. Rodney Peterson, the director of NICE, he came out to Colorado Springs in an initiative trying to solve the problems that we're discussing right now. What are how do we get people jobs? How do we get entry level? How do we incorporate the younger generation coming out of high school some of them are graduating out of high school with certifications and hand-on experience. They're building computer system and gaming systems they're very complex. So they've got skills already. And how do we incorporate that? Well, NIST, NICE program, we did the pre-event back in March with a couple of different universities in a large community of IT business owners, cybersecurity business owners, academia participated in. Hey, how complex is this? What are the things that we're doing to try and solve these problems? And that's what Rodney and his team in the NICE program do, is they are actually out in the community talking to us about how we solve these problems. And then they incorporate them as industry best practices in their framework. And they're getting ready to release the next framework. But there is the big NICE conference is coming the first week of June. So here in a couple of weeks, I will be a member of one of their panels. It'll be at the Denver Convention Center, but their role is to really look at whether you're entry level, somewhere mid-career, or somewhere maybe senior career. There's different problems we're trying to solve at each one of those areas. In the NIST and NICE program, they take a look at academia, they take a look at certifications, they take a look at internships, mentorships, apprenticeships, and we look at how we can use these and leverage these as tools and resources for employers that are trying to solve the problem, as well as academia who are trying to solve those problems and establish partnerships and get people jobs. And then those that are the professionals. All of us are working together to try and solve this problem.
Yeah, and it's a great resource that's, I think, underappreciated by the community. There are people who don't even know about that. So look that up, NICE, part of NIST.
But all those resources are free.
Yeah, and worthwhile to look at. So I spent the greater part of this week doing a deep dive on the healthcare industry. And of course, my focus is healthcare security, but what I was looking at this week was all of the AI development for diagnostics and for administration.
Right.
So that leads me to think about what's the impact of AI and AI development on the future of cybersecurity and cybersecurity skills.
As you know, John, doing all the data crunching with the ESG survey in your previous role, all those years of contributing to that with ISSA, we have been able to track and see the complexity. And you and I both know one of the biggest challenges in our industry at all levels is the pervasiveness of the newer technology. And it's one of the challenges we see in the respondents that respond to our survey. And so trying to keep up with the pace of technology is significant. Artificial intelligence is one of the most concerning, most wanted, desired, and being incorporated. I was at RSA presenting our research from last year, and we had over 100 people in our session. I got the opportunity to attend the keynote sessions on the first day, and an executive from Cisco was presenting, and the first thing he talked about was the new Colorado Artificial Intelligence Act and agentive AI and those algorithms that may discriminatory algorithms being used in AI that are of great concern, right? So we don't want to harm the human, the environment, the system. We want to be able to be productive. At the same time, we want to have some, safety wheels on that bicycle. And so from an IT and cybersecurity perspective, we are going to be needing people to be able to work with that type of technology to assess those areas that may be dependent on the IA or AI. So I think one of the things that we need to do, and this is a big discussion all week, we need to have different categorizations for the different types of AI that there are, because not all AIs are the same. In agentive AI was the big topic all week long in discriminatory algorithms. So one of the things that Cisco talked about is they believe, instead of all the legislation that's being passed without a conference with the developers in our industry, passing legislation that is difficult to understand, interpret, and then maintain, they need to be part of that. We, as in the industry, need to help cultivate what the responsibilities are, the ethical responsibilities. And they have released their own AI, so a security AI, to evaluate other AIs in these areas where we're concerned. And so they released it for free. And the idea is everyone is available to use it and then contribute to it so that it's meaningful. And so here's an opportunity for IT professionals, cyber professionals, to put their hands on this technology, increase their skills, as an example, and start understanding how to solve those problems. Healthcare, highly regulatory environment in the United States. You go overseas, now you're talking about, GDPR and other countries, privacy laws as well. But you've got the OT technology that is collecting data for the patient, as well as the HIPAA data being processed for insurance purposes, or, just the basic care between the provider and the patient. And so you've got to protect all of that information. If AI is looking at all of that data or that information outside of the parameters that we intended, that could be a problem. Now we go back to the target breach, because that's a third-party supply chain risk management issue.
Yeah, and just to give you a metric that I found this week, is one of the big teaching hospitals in the United States, I won't say which one, but what they said was, to get the data that they needed to train their models, they had to go out to 1,200 different systems. So imagine all of that data moving around the network. It has to be aggregated, it has to be normalized, you have to train it. There's plenty of room for abuse there. So that's just one example. Shawn, what do you think, as you look forward for training purposes and just your general observation of the industry, what do you think the future of the CISO position is, like 2 or 3 years down the line?
There's been a lot of changes just in the last few years. And, we take a look at Joe Sullivan over at Uber, and Tim Brown's going through it right now. You've got 2 CISOs that have been indicted. Actually, Joe finally got through everything, and his conviction was 3 years suspended and some community service. And Tim is still navigating the waters from SolarWinds. So if executives can be held criminally liable for the decisions that their businesses are making, and they're supporting them, things need to change from governance at the highest top. I think the argument as to whether the CISO should be at the executive board is done. The CISO needs a seat at the board. You're counting on them, you're holding them accountable, and now they can be civilly and criminally held accountable. And the errors and omissions insurance for those professionals are starting to get a lot more rigorous as well. Put the CISO at the board. That's where they should be. They need to be part of the strategic conversations, especially when we're talking about AI. I've got a client that is using an AI for consumer engagements right now to determine whether or not the individual between the consumer engagement and my client is doing all the things that they're required to. So I have to tell you it's a recorded call, and then I have to tell you various things at the beginning of the engagement. And at the end of the engagement, the AI in the background that the consumer doesn't know is going, is evaluating the willingness of them to pay their debt at the end of the engagement. So when we say you're on a recorded call, is that enough informed consent to notify the consumer that we're doing other things with this engagement as well? Those things need to be discussed. before executives purchase that technology. CISO or the director of IT, whatever you want to call that person, they need to be at the board in those strategic discussions.
Yeah, no question. And that's got to happen, or that is happening now, but it's got to happen. So let's transition now to the cybersecurity bridge, how we get from where we are to a future state. So I project 2 to 3 years out, there'll be massive AI development and deployment, which means, and in conjunction with other things, the attack surface is going to grow like crazy. At the same time, the adversary will adopt or further adopt AI for attacks. So you look at that, you're a CISO. What do you need from a staffing perspective? What do you need from a skills perspective?
So first, I need more cybersecurity architects and engineers, because we're talking about putting parameters to control where the AI is going. And so from a skill sets perspective, I just don't need custodians like sysadmins, netadmins, DBAs, and software developers. I still need them because they're writing the applications and they're maintaining the environment. But I think the role of the security architect, the security engineer for complex environments, the need for rigorous segmentation is going to be significant in the next 3 to 5 years as we transition. And so I think those software engineers, those systems engineers that are coming out of colleges and university, there should be a strong acumen, 2 or 3 different courses specifically on establishing the parameters of what we call a secure architecture, especially in highly regulated industries like healthcare, retail, OT being another issue, operational technology for critical infrastructure. I think we really need that.
So I'll extrapolate zero trust, network segmentation, MFA, role-based access controls. We kind of tactically look at all those, but you're thinking architecturally those need to come together and we need people who can do that.
Yeah, security architects and security engineers need to be working together on complex projects, rolling out technologies like AI.
Okay, and in the future, what role do you think AI will play in training the next generation of security professionals or enhancing their careers, enhancing their skill sets?
Yeah, so this is still a human responsibility. What is it as far as the scope of the training that we want to the individual or maybe to the workforce as a whole? So if I'm looking at establishing a cyber awareness program just for the employees, that's going to be a different approach. But for the skill sets, you still need humans to deliver training. So, we just still have computer-based training. We have little snippets. But there's so much that goes into, as a professional academic, teaching at universities and developing curriculum and developing course, where for organizations, there's a psychological component that's required to develop sound curriculum. And if you're aligning it to knowledge-based skills that are required for a specific discipline, they've got to be evaluated. And then if there's an examination component, you've got to develop test questions at the basic, medium, and intermediate and advanced level. You've got to test those. You've got to see how they perform. That requires a professional sociologist or psychologist to be able to work with you if you're doing a sound program, right? That you expect in degree programs or ISO certified certification programs as well. So I think the AI is going to help take our content and present it in a way that allows us to approve them more rapidly. As a professional training company, we're actually looking at some AI tools to help us deliver content that was more self-paced, but now I can put an avatar that looks like a human, a sock puppet. I can give it the dialogue that it needs. I can change the voice, the appearance, depending on what it is, and deliver the content without having to have a real human. there's advantages for that, and it's repetitive, and I don't have to worry about the content not being delivered consistently. As a professional academic, that's one of the things that concerns me, is making sure the content is being delivered as designed without deviation, and AI is going to help us do that. So there's advantages and disadvantages, but the human still needs to oversee the whole process, in my opinion.
I agree. I think AI opens some opportunities for things like synthetic training. So put somebody in front of a simulated Splunk console, for example, take some of the experience that other people have had and then simulate that for training purposes. But you're right, at a certain point, it's the human above that who has to not only manage that student, but kind of build the courseware that includes AI and the kind of human element.
Sure. We've got to be able to script the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and assessments necessary for the expected outcomes for the course or the snippet, the class, the instruction, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or it's an entire course. We've got to be able to put the structure in there, a syllabus, if you want to say, and then make sure that we're getting the desired outcomes from the class.
Now, with your experience with NICE and NIST, and certainly this isn't a political podcast, but there's some indecision about what's going to happen with federal programs. What do you see for federal programs in the future? Because we need the Fed's help to bridge this gap. And what do you want from the federal government in terms of cybersecurity education?
Yeah, so during the Obama administration, he signed two important executive orders. One established our national critical infrastructure. The other established the cybersecurity framework. And so, there's a lot of other executive orders, but those are two that I fall back on. And those have evolved over time. They're necessary. I just taught a course on NIST earlier this week to a large corporate global customer. And the cybersecurity framework, the new one that came out last year, 2.0, is a significant portion of everything that they do. They do stuff with healthcare. They do stuff with retail. They do stuff with other regulated environments. But when we look at the role of the federal government, the current administration's approach is to deregulize, to get more the Reagan mindset, right? We don't want government ruling every aspect of our lives, but I think the government, especially the Department of Commerce, where NIST resides, is really important for setting those standards, as they have since over 100 years ago, establishing a standardized best practice. And I think that's really important to continue on, especially when we take a look at what other countries are doing. The United States does really well leading the effort in some things like the NIST and NICE program. The CVE, the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures program that almost got axed, last month, that lasted about 24 hours before the entire world said, no, we need that MITRE program that is funded by the federal government. They're going to have to pick and choose. We need to influence where we can to maintain those things that are very valuable and provide a lot of meaning for our industries and to our people.
And the two areas that I look for there are AI. So there are a lot of frameworks, but certainly the Fed should be on top of that. And then critical infrastructure, which we see NIST 2 in Europe. We see similar departmental initiatives here. I'd like to see more. But Shawn, I could talk to you all day.
I know, right?
Before we get on, we just scratched the surface, but we're out of time, except for my last question that I ask every guest. And that's what's the one takeaway that you would like to communicate to cybersecurity professionals who are watching this podcast?
No matter what you're doing, the terrain in cybersecurity is so complex today. I would encourage you to join various networking events. ISSA, ISC2, ISACA, they all have their own chapters. If you've got an acumen for software development, JavaScript meetup groups, Microsoft security groups. There's so many opportunities out there to collaborate with others to stay up on things. And I would encourage you to read things that are of interest in our industry as well, to keep up on things. There's several things that I subscribe to, but if you're not keeping up in your industry and you're not ingesting information in attending events, I think you're going to get behind, and it might be overwhelming. So that is networking and looking at things that are interesting to keep up with what's going on in our industry, to stay up to date on things.
That's great. And I will add, manage your career. Don't let your career manage you. I should say that as Kennedy voice. Manage your career. Don't let your career manage you. Because too many people I talk to get into this industry. They like technology, but once you're in, there are lots of different avenues to pursue: risk side, business side, technical side. So manage your career. So Shawn, thanks so much for being my guest. Again, come back sometime. We're just getting started.
Yeah, scratching the surface. Thanks, John. I appreciate your time.
Okay, and everyone, I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of I can't even say it, the Cybersecurity Bridge.